Ladies and gentlemen, you watch Corridor 8 podcast, the Macedonian-Bulgarian podcast. And today, the topic of our episode number 243, is Pants on Fire, Chris Kostov's investigation of historical forgeries in Toronto. Dr. Chris Kostov is an associate professor of international relations and modern history in IE University, Madrid and Segovia, an adjunct professor at Schiller International University. He earned his Ph.D. in history from the University of Ottawa, Canada, with a dissertation called Contested Ethnic Identity, the Case of Macedonian Immigrants in Toronto, 1940-1996. He is the author of several books, including Contested Ethnic Identity and the Communist Century. His research interests include nationalism, Russian propaganda in the EU, and the politics of language and identity in the Balkans. He has been invited speaker and panelist at numerous international conferences, including those focused on Bulgarian-Macedonian relations, Balkan historical disputes, and the legacy of communism in Eastern Europe. He combines deep scholarly knowledge with a talent for explaining complex topics to broader audience. Professor Kostov, it is our honor to have you on Corridor 8 today.
Thank you very much for your generous presentation. The pleasure is entirely mine and my honor.
We have a very, very interesting topic today to discuss. It's about the use of historical sources. It's about the scientific ethics. It's about the historical narratives and the unfortunate combination of politics and historical research, and how politics and contemporary political affiliations or national affiliations could deform, could change the, let's say, the objective historical narrative about certain events, processes, organizations, or persons. But before all, I would like to ask you something more, something aside from our topic. Usually on our podcast, when we start talking with people about their histories and their origins, it appears that many of the people who come in the podcast have their origins from Macedonia. So I would like to ask you, first of all, do you have some Macedonian ancestry?
Yes, on my father's side, my great-grandfather comes from what it's called Aegean Macedonia, which is nowadays in northern Greece. But of course, at that time, people living there were Bulgarians and Greeks. They declared their national identity back then as Bulgarians and Greeks.
So, Tane, another Macedonian.
Yeah.
The poor.
Yes.
Here again, it's part of minority.
I'm a minority here. I'm Thracian Bulgarian. But we will talk today not about your origins. It's good that your origins are not disputed, at least for now.
At least for now.
But we will talk about the origins of the Macedonian immigration, the people who moved from Macedonia, from the historical, cultural region of Macedonia into Canada in the end of 19th and the early decades of the 20th century. And you have a very interesting book that you wrote, and we would like to ask you more about your research. But first of all, Professor Kostov, what sparked your academic interest in studying Macedonian immigration to Canada, particularly to Toronto? Was there some personal experience or motivation, maybe your own origins as a Macedonian Bulgarian from Aegean Macedonia, or some historical event or some scholarly gap that inspired your focus on this topic?
Yes, Mr. Stankov, of course, when you try to find a topic for your PhD dissertation, that's one of the most important things, to find the scholarly gap, to find an original topic. And I was juggling with some topics and wondering what to do when one of my professors, Professor Mark Stolarik, a Slovak Canadian, who was teaching me a course at the University of Ottawa on European migration to Canada, suggested me to write about the Bulgarian immigration. And then when I did further research, I realized that most actually Bulgarian immigrants at the time, as you said, late 19th, beginning of 20th century, were actually coming from the regional territory back then of the Ottoman Empire Macedonia, the region Macedonia. And nevertheless, they declared themselves Bulgarians. And that caught my interest, and I decided to write about the Macedonian immigration, because the majority of Bulgarians coming to Canada were from this region, as I said. And the second thing is that also most of them migrated to Toronto, which was a big center and with more opportunities to find jobs.
As far as I know, in Toronto, there are 3 Macedonian-Bulgarian churches. So it was a big, very big center for the immigration from Macedonia, especially the Bulgarians.
That's correct.
Okay.
Yes, they started to build very, very quickly first village societies, so-called benevolent societies that would help each other, so that if there is any issue with finding a job or finding accommodation or helping someone financially, people could help each other. So that's why first they created village societies and benevolent associations, uniting people from one village, because initially when people came, they had more very local village identity. And then, especially with the Balkan Wars, they openly started to declare a national Bulgarian identity, and many immigrants actually came back to the Balkans to volunteer in the Bulgarian army. And they created first, in 1911, the Macedono-Bulgarian Cathedral, St. Cyril and Methody, and later in 1940, the second church, St. George, would appear, and then the third church would appear after World War II, Holy Trinity, Macedono-Bulgarian Church. All of them would be called Macedono-Bulgarian churches, so that it is clear to everybody that these are churches built by Bulgarians from Macedonia. So they had this strong attachment to the region Macedonia, especially because it was still not liberated. It was not part of the Bulgarian state.
Very interesting.
Professor Kostov, can you describe the research methods you used to study Macedonian immigrants and their organization in Canada? For example, desk research, interviews, or other approach? And who were some of the key individuals or sources you consulted?
Yeah, that's a very good question. I tried to use different methods and to really explore as many sources as possible. On the one hand, I used, of course, all the available secondary sources, and this is how I would, for example, encounter the book Settlers and Sojourners by Lilian Petrov, who wrote about Macedonian immigrants until 1940. And then I would go to the archives to see also the primary sources such as documents, constitutions of the different ethnic associations, church documents created by the MPO in Toronto and also in Indianapolis and other cities. And also I decided to use the method of oral history to have oral in-person interviews with individuals who associate themselves with the Bulgarian community, as well as individuals who associate themselves with the Macedonian community and the Greek community, to make sure that I represent the three different viewpoints, because I realized that even though until the Second World War, the immigrants coming to Canada were declaring themselves Bulgarians with Bulgarian national identity. In the 1940s, for first time, because of communist influence, because of the decision of the Comintern to create a new Macedonian nation, as you know, George Dimitrov as well as Stalin even had crazier ideas to create also Dobrujan nation, Thracian nation. So following this, we're representatives here because on my mother's side, she comes from Dobruja. Georgi said he's Thracian. So now we are Macedonians here, Thracians and Dobrujans, and there are no Bulgarians. So there were attempts to try to create such movement also in Toronto, and I used also an interview, not done by me, but interviewed by another anthropologist, Irene Markov, Dincho Rally, who talks about this period in the 1940s. But then I realized that essentially the three communities crystallized in the 1960s when alongside the Bulgarian and the Greek community appeared also the ethnic Macedonian community with the new wave of immigrants coming from Yugoslavia. Because you have to realize that after World War II, practically Bulgarian immigrants were not able to come to Canada because of the Iron Curtain. And since the 1960s, Tito opens the gates of Yugoslavia, and many people, including immigrants from now the Yugoslav Republic of Macedonia, managed to come to Toronto and to Canada per se. And on the other hand, of course, there were both ethnic Greeks coming from northern Greece, from Aegean Macedonia, as well as ethnic Bulgarians, descendants of the so-called patriarchists, people who preferred to side with the Greek church and the Greek national idea, the Megali idea, if you want. And so I also attached these people to the Greek community because they declare themselves as Greeks. It's another story how this happened and the pressure and the blacklists by Greece, etc. But if someone tells me I'm Greek, but I speak Bulgarian, okay, I just put it this way.
Yeah, we have to respect under certain circumstances how people declare themselves, and also how they express themselves in their written documents and public appearance. Mm-hmm. And we can discuss about how actually this kind of identification was formed, how it was created in certain individuals. I agree with you, there are very different processes. You mentioned Dr. Lilian Petrov's book. Also, I saw that one of your sources was Peter Vassiliadis. His book was entitled "Whose Are You?" CT. As we say in Bulgarian or Macedonian language today, CT. Whose are you? What you noticed in their approach that you wanted to use, to repeat in your research, and what you wanted to avoid. What was the missing gap, and what was your special place? How did you position your research among other already published researches on Macedonian immigration in Canada, especially in Toronto. Vassiliadis was published in 1989, and Petrov's book was published in 1995. So what was your aspiration here on this direction?
Well, I noticed that Vassiliadis talks more about the Greek Macedonians and the Greek identity. He puts, of course, more emphasis on this, while on the other hand, actually Lilian Petrov talks until 1940. That's why initially, when I started the dissertation, and that was the advice of my PhD supervisor, Professor Stolarik, that I have to write then my dissertation from 1940 until 1996, since we assume that Lilian Petrov did the job, did everything possible until 1940. So there's no need to discuss this period. But eventually, when I started to look at the documents, I realized that yes, she mentioned the period, but she actually misinterpreted and even intentionally falsified documents. And this is what shocked me. And I realized that I actually have to tackle this period. And eventually, that's why you probably noticed that if my dissertation is the case of Macedonian immigrants 1940 to 1996, my book actually goes back 1900 to 1996. What I followed, of course, by Vassiliadis and Petrov and Brzezinovsky and other researchers, was to do what they did in terms of looking at the same archival documents. So I followed their steps to also see the same archival documents, chapters of different organizations, pictures, church documents, etc. And of course, I discovered also other documents so that I compare their conclusions to what actually the documents were saying. And I discovered, for my dismay, very, very big discrepancies between what they say, what they write in the book, and what these documents state. Because what Lilian Petrov especially writes in her book is that since the very beginning, since 1900, there were people who declared themselves Macedonians, who were using Macedonian language, who built Macedonian churches, who had Macedonian picnics, who even had Macedonian English dictionaries, and basically everything was in Macedonian. But then she started to, even in her book, to contradict herself, because at some point, well, she says that they were all Macedonian, speaking Macedonian. At some point, she says that initially they used Bulgarian books, Bulgarian textbooks to learn Macedonian. And then she says that we can call the language at the beginning also Macedono-Bulgarian. So very, very contradictory statements like that. And that's why I decided to dig deeply into the archives and to see what the reality really was.
And looking back at your research, what were your basic challenges in this project, from a methodological, from a even political perspective, or access-related issues? I mean, if we discuss the falsifications, the forgeries of documents, that is a kind of political issue. Or if we have to look about the motivation of such act, it is probably political. I don't know what it, for sure it is not scientific issue. So could you tell us more about all these methodological, political, access-related, research-related challenges for you during your PhD project, and after that during your edition of the book? And looking back 16 years later, how has your perspective on this research evolved?
Well, actually, I had many challenges, unfortunately. One of them was, as you say, methodologically, because in Canada, everything is very politically correct, as you know. Nobody wanted, as they say, bombastic claims. So they say, well, don't call this forgery, don't call it falsification. So even finding the right term was a challenge. So I had to discuss it all the time with my supervisor, but eventually he even told me, okay, but you have to even find a second opinion, because he couldn't believe it, that's possible. That's why, can I share? I'll share the screen for a second. My supervisor, can you see this? I think you see it. So my supervisor asked me to go to an official translator who would declare this, what I say, that it's true. So I literally went to an official translator, and as you see, a translator from Bulgarian.
Excuse me, we can't see what you share. Can you repeat again this exercise? So it's
okay.
present.
Yes. What I forgot is to select actually
Okay.
the window or the screen. Sorry about that.
It's okay.
Or what I'll do, I'll just do it like that, entire screen. So as you can see, I went to a translator.
We probably still have to click on something. I don't know.
Okay, I don't know what's. Oh, allow. Can you see my screen now?
Yes, we have used full screen. Okay.
So yes, as you can see, Eva Georgieva, she declared what I discovered really to be a fact, that all these documents that I gave her, like as you see, Banitsa Benevolent Society, the Bulgarian-American letter writer, and the constitutions of different organizations, the Macedonian Almanac in 1940, published by Macedonian Tribune, the first Bulgarian English pocket dictionary, Bulgarian and Bulgarian English phrase book, the Macedonian newspaper, Naroden Glas newspaper, and the Jubilee Almanac. All these documents, she declared that they were actually written in Bulgarian. And as you see, there were other documents like, say, the truth about Macedonia, American missionaries testimony, where they talk about the Bulgarians in Macedonia, where they talk about numbers of Bulgarians, etc. I had other interesting documents like the plight of the Bulgarians under the rule of Serbs and Greeks from 1912 up to the present day, published by the Macedonian Political Organization, as you see, in Indianapolis. I had, as you see, this is by the Central Committee of the MPO, a pilgrimage to the grave of Saint Cyril in Rome in the name of a planned national cultural genocide, talking how now on the Bulgarians in Vardar, Macedonia, a new identity has been imposed: Macedonian nationality, Macedonian language, and distortions of history about King Samuel in medieval ages, etc., etc. All this has been exposed, and you can see also the signatures under these documents. What is the national character of the Macedonian Slavs by Professor Heinrich Stammler, as you see, MPO 1971. The Macedonian Bulgarians by the testimony of Enver Bey Pasha, Turkish national hero, as you see, by Christ Anastasov, published by MPO in 1972. As you see, disclosure on the situation of the Bulgarians in Greek Macedonia in June 1960, again by the MPO, talking about the plight of Bulgarians in Greek Macedonia and what they do, how they're forced to abandon their identity, how churches are closed, priests and schools and school teachers are also gone. Declaration on the Macedonian question, as you see, a lot of interesting documents like that. Oh, by the way, also here is Bulgaro-Ruski Slavar, as you see, in St. Petersburg, 1848. That was later made into a dissertation by Ludmil Spasov, who defended, as you see, a dissertation on the Macedonian-Russian dictionary of Konstantin Petkovic. And the fun part here is talking about forgery. That's an open forgery, but just to understand the roots of the forgeries, why these people did it in Toronto, it's because they were inspired by the Yugoslav authorities in Skopje and Belgrade to continue this policy, because that started, of course, in Yugoslavia. And you can see it here clearly that Blaže Koneski himself, one of the big architects of historical and linguistic forgeries. Imagine here, as you see, he is the main reviewer, the main reader, as you see, recensent, Academic Blaže Koneski. So Academic Blaže Koneski in 1988, as you see here, 8th of November 1988 in Skopje, he talks how great this dissertation is, which talks about this Macedonian-Russian dictionary of Konstantin Petkovic. So as you see, if you have all these documents, why wouldn't you do the same in Toronto? That's the question, and essentially that's what they did. And I wanted also to show you something else, which is very important. Yes, that when I went to the guide of the Multicultural History Society of Ontario, which back then was part of the University of Toronto archives, where they have the collections of the different ethnic communities in Toronto. And now, by the way, this is part of the provincial archives of the province of Ontario in Canada. So very serious institution with historical records. As you see, back then I used the guide created by Nick Forte in 1992. So first of all, when you go to the guide, these are original. This was the original document, how I found it. When I opened the guide, as you see, you have an interview of Yoto Musmanis that Irene Markov did in 1977, as you see. And she writes it that the interview was in Bulgarian and English. And he immigrated to Canada in 1927. And he was a prominent member of the Dambeni Benevolent Society, and the documents of the Dambeni Benevolent Society are all in Bulgarian, or later in English and Bulgarian. But as you see, someone immediately thought, oh, wow, how did we miss that? So that is circled, and it says, change to Macedonian section. So obviously, there was an intention. All the documents that mentioned Macedonian, even though the term back then was just a regional term about the region Macedonia, not about any nationality. It was considered a region in the Ottoman Empire, but nevertheless, they decided to change all these documents to move them to the Macedonian section. So as you see, the Bulgarian section is poor, barely any documents. And then you go to the Macedonian section, and this is where my big surprise was. As you see, you have a lot of different pictures from different villages in Aegean and Vardar, Macedonia. You have photographs by the Macedonian Patriotic Organization, Krvava Svadba traditional theater play in Detroit. As you remember, Saint Cyril's grave that I just showed you, the document where they talk about the cultural genocide of Bulgarian identity and language in Macedonia. All this is suddenly in the Macedonian section of the archives. Macedonian proverbs, Prikaska za Bapčor, written obviously in Bulgarian. As you see, the latest section of the Macedonian Patriotic Organization in 1970. Even John Grudev, the first Bulgarian doctor in Toronto, John Grudev, who was born near Yambol.
Yeah, he was from the village of Gramatikovo. He's a Thracian Bulgarian. Yeah, he's a Thracian Bulgarian.
And imagine a Thracian Bulgarian from Gramatikovo, from Yambol area, far away from the region Macedonia or from Yugoslav Macedonia in the 1960s. Suddenly his scrapbook, his entire correspondence, unpublished manuscripts, clippings, programs, photographs, even of his daughter, Marian Grudev, everything that is either in English or Bulgarian, suddenly it is in the Macedonian section. Funny enough for some, but for me, that was a real tragedy because that's a falsification. As you see, all the benevolent associations, also religious ceremonies, Saint Cyril, Methody, all their Macedonian Bulgarian church. As you see, by the way, this is another falsification. It says saints, as you see, 1935, 56, and then religious ceremonies at Saint Cyril and Methody Macedonian Orthodox Church of 1911, which is a forgery because in 1911, I think you still see my screen. This is the picture that was included. First Macedonian church in Canada, 1911. You see the Bulgarian flags here have been waved. And to this day, the church is Macedono-Bulgarian Cathedral, St. Cyril and Methody. How can you call it just Macedonian church? The Miladinov brothers, the Bulgarian actually songs of Miladinov brothers are just included there. As well as you see, very interesting, even Macedonian Bulgarian St. George, though, is called Macedonian Bulgarian Eastern Orthodox Church. And then it says, a theatrical production soccer team and a Bulgarian school in 1941-47. Well, if it is a Bulgarian school, why it is in the Macedonian section? Not clear. As you see here, they say Naroden Glas Bulgarian bookstore, section of Bulgarian language books, selection of Bulgarian language books, all of this in the Macedonian section. At least here they're still Bulgarian, but then the falsifications become more open. As you see, the first Bulgarian English dictionary by Hristo Nedelkov is included in the Macedonian section of the archives, but then it goes even worse because the Bulgaro-Amerikansky Pismovnik becomes suddenly from Bulgarian English letter writer or Bulgarian American letter writer becomes Macedonian Bulgarian phrasebook and letter writer. So Lilian Petrov claims that in 1917 already, and by the way, look at the contradiction. She says that Yovchev wrote Macedonian Bulgarian phrasebook and letter writer in 1917 in Chicago in English and Macedonian. And I even was so emotional back then as a student that I scratched the word Macedonian and I wrote Bulgarian. It even says here corrected by H. Kostov, because I was absolutely shocked by this open, as you see, forgery. How this could be? It's even contradictory. How can you write Bulgarian Macedonian letter writer and then to be
I would like to show you the Multicultural Historical Society of Ontario. awarded in 1996 Dr. Lilian Petrov for her book published by the MHSO. So this book was even awarded. I mean, it could be very nice research, but there is one, what we see now, there is one, a very, very, very big problem with this research. Correct me if I'm right, but what I see is that through falsifications, Dr. Petrov is trying to appropriate the cultural, historical, and political heritage of the Macedonian Bulgarians in North America, especially in Canada, especially in Toronto. Just the same way as the government of the Yugoslavian Republic of Macedonia was doing just the same thing, appropriation of the cultural, historical, and political heritage of the Bulgarians in the territory, on the territory of the region of Macedonia. So this is the same process, but in two very distinct and different points of the earth, in very different cultures and states. How it is possible for a society like the Canadian society to be a victim of such forgery? For communist regime, or now the post-communist regime that dictates in Skopje, we can easily understand, because I grew up in communism. I know how communism works. It was the same in Yugoslavia, or Yugoslavia. This is a play of words. This Slavia, the slaves. I know how it works in communism. I don't know how it works or why it worked in a democracy, in a multicultural, open, transparent society. Or maybe it is just because this society is open, democratic, and they have a high level of trust. Can you explain this for us, please?
Mr. Stankov, in a sense, you answered your own question, because exactly this is what happens. These communists sent by Yugoslavia, as well as people like Lilian Petrov, who were attracted already by them, were used to take advantage of the open democratic society, and to do this in a very sneaky, hidden way, so that nobody even suspects that there is something political. That's what I discovered, because initially when I saw these documents, as you see, numerous documents, including documents that openly say Bulgarian, and you would say, okay, this happens in Skopje, but how this happened in Toronto? Well, very easily, it happened because Lilian Petrov was considered a social scientist with a doctorate from Canada, born in Canada, educated in Canada. So nobody in Canada really had any doubts in her academic and scholarly integrity, right? Because they say she was born here, she has some origin from the Balkans, so she speaks the language. So if she comes and says this is written in Macedonian, and I'm actually a scholar with a PhD, I can help you to actually really archive all these documents and arrange them properly. People had no reason to doubt. It's like, if you have some documents, say from Kenya, and someone comes and says, I know Swahili and I can help you to just make a good library and good archives, say in Haskovo, and this is documents from Tanzania, these are from Kenya, you'll believe it. You would have no doubt. And this is what happened. I think that they were very naive. Not only this, but they in Canada, she even became the president of the Multicultural History Society of Ontario. So, but I didn't want to accuse her of something that she didn't do, because initially you may say, what is your proof that how do you know that she did it? Well, very interesting, when I started to go into these microfilms, into the documents, because some of these constitutions of benevolent associations, etc., they were actually on microfilm, or documents that were archived, they had short description in English. And I saw very often on these documents that they were translated, right? Because they're written in Bulgarian. So after the description, the original transcription in Bulgarian, say mere benevolent association, below it was written in English, the translation, and then it was written language, Macedonian, and then archived by Dr. Lilian Petrov. So she even put her name there. Archived, meaning that she put it in the archives, this document. So that for me means that she saw the document, she herself decided that it should be put into the Macedonian section of the archives, and she signed with her name that she declares this document to be written in Macedonian, and that's why it has to go to the Macedonian section. And that's why then I realized why her book is such a mess, where a document called Bulgarsko-Amerikanski Pismovnik becomes suddenly Bulgarian-Macedonian letter writer, but at the same time it's written in Macedonian and English suddenly. So then I realized that she was probably the main perpetrator behind this operation, and nobody, because as I said, Canada is an open society, nobody suspected that someone could do this here, because in Skopje or Belgrade we know it happens, but in Toronto we thought it wouldn't happen.
So I would like to share another list with the documents from the collection of Ontario Multicultural Society. It's very important. I think it's important for the people who watch us to know that the collections in the Society's archive are based on race or ethnicity. So if we put some document in the Macedonian collection, that means that this document is directly related with the history, the activities, the organizations of the people who identify as ethnic Macedonians, right? If we put a document in the Armenian collection, that means that the people who created such document had Armenian Canadian identity. They were ethnically Armenians. If a person from Greece has created some document, even if this person is from the region of Macedonia, but identified as a Greek, no matter how he reached this identification, but he acted as a Greek, declared as Greek, this document should belong to the Greek collection, even despite the fact that the person was born in Macedonia. So let me show you something from this perspective, how they actually put such documents. So this is the Arabic collection, the Armenian collection, a lot of documents, Black collection, so Afro-Americans, Afro-Canadians, Bulgarian collection.
It is nothing. There is basically nothing.
Yeah. There are three documents: Belarusian collection, Czech collection, etc., etc., Danish, Dutch collection, and so many. So this is ethnicities, this is nationality, this is not Estonian collection, Filipino, Finnish, etc., etc., German, a lot of German things. I would like to show the Macedonian collection.
And the Macedonian collection suddenly is so rich, way richer, with so many documents, many more than the Bulgarian collection. That's what I saw, and that's a big problem, because when Bulgarians talk in Bulgaria, they think that the whole world knows that this is not the case, that these people who came from the region of Macedonia in the early 20th century declared themselves Bulgarians. But you know what happens? Because now these documents actually say that there were ethnic Macedonians. When I actually published the book, as by the way, if you allow me a second time, just for a second, I would like to share with you a screen to see what a big problem this creates for. Just give me a second, please.
I would like to say to my friend Atanas, Tane, this is a joke. Ivan Mikhailov, who was a very famous Macedonian Bulgarian, his document belongs to the ethnic Macedonian section.
I see.
Yes.
And it's not the only one thing. Look this Macedonian Almanac. So our friend from Columbus, Ohio, Greg Chechov, sent to me several photos of the Macedonian Almanac from 1940. So in this collection, it is written that it's published in Macedonian language.
Yes,
which is absolutely nonsense. This is absurd. This is a lie.
Yes, Mr. But I'm sorry to interrupt you, but I wanted to tell you something very important. You say it's absurd, and I agree with you. However, when these documents are in the Macedonian section, you see what happens when my book went on Goodreads. The first reviewer says that, first of all, the author incorrectly suggests that ethnic Macedonians did not have a Macedonian identity before 1940. And he says that if you go to the archives, American, Canadian censuses of the early 1900s, where in both countries people declare their nationality as Macedonian and language as Macedonian. Seems he wrote this book to mirror Sophia's discriminatory policy toward Macedonians, including those living in Bulgaria. And the second reviewer even says that this book has to be taken off the shelves and off the internet. So that again shows you the problems that if you allow this to happen, if you allow this forgery to happen, of course, many academics, independent academics from Canada, from the US, from other countries, will believe it to be true. Because if you're an American professor researching, let me ask you guys this question. If you are American, Australian, or German researchers of the immigration in Canada, obviously you would go to these archives, right? Yep. And if these archives say that these documents are written in Macedonian, who would you believe? An independent Canadian organization stating that in early 20th century there were dictionaries, documents, constitutions written in Macedonian, or you would believe Sofia University or a Sofia professor? You would say they're associated with the state propaganda of Bulgaria, whereas these Canadians, they're the real thing. These are the facts, and that's why it's so problematic, and that's why since 2009 I've been repeating over and over again that this should be corrected.
Obviously it should be corrected. This is a misinterpretation, this is a misinformation, and obviously, as we know the context of the contemporary relationships between the governments in Skopje and Bulgaria, this is obvious attempt to appropriate the heritage of people who identified themselves as Macedonian Bulgarian.
Yes.
This is okay. So one of the big challenges, since we speak about challenges here, what I see, one of the big challenges was that, first of all, you had to have a official document that what you wrote in your dissertation is true. Nobody asked Dr. Petrov what is written is true, but you had to officially have the document that your translations, your interpretation of the text is correct.
That's right.
Okay, you repeat this for many years. Is there any kind of intellectual compromise that people from the scientific world do, or people from organizations, I would say very noble, well-intended organizations like the Multicultural Historical Society, Heritage Society of Ontario, organizations with good reputation. Is there any kind of intellectual compromise here? Why nobody reacts to this?
I think because the influence probably of Lilian Petrov was too big in the Multicultural History Society of Ontario, and they just it would be very easy for her to persuade them that since I'm Bulgarian, therefore I'm a Bulgarian propagandist, so ignore me. I would say this is one reason why this continues. The other reason why this continues because the Bulgarian institutions didn't take really serious effort, including the Bulgarian academic community, didn't really take any action to correct this. Only, as you probably know, Svetoslav Stankov, our Bulgarian consul in Chicago, is trying to do something. But besides this, the others didn't do really anything, even though I've talked to Bulgarian diplomats since 2009 about this issue. And talking about compromises, unfortunately, yes, academics have to very often make these unfortunate compromises. Some of them because it's so hard to find a job in the social science world. I myself had to look for a position for 4 years after my graduation. People like Christina Kramer, they just decided to close their eyes when they were offered. She was offered a position to be a chair of Macedonian Studies chair at the University of Toronto. So she closed her eyes to the truth because the Yugoslav government gave $1 million to the University of Toronto to open this chair. And since she is the professor of the chair, she decided to just close her eyes and talk about Macedonian identity and documents, even if they say Bulgarian. In my case, I had to make a compromise because of the Greek pressure I had. I think I mentioned. I
would like to ask you about. Keep your thought here, Professor Kostov.
Sure.
It's a very interesting moment. I respect very much your academic honesty. There was a very interesting question, a comment from one of our viewers on our previous episode, which we did in Bulgarian, the language of the Macedonian Patriotic Organization at the time, when Dr. Petrov made her research. So it was a very interesting episode, and one of our viewers, he's called the Pirin Advocate. I will try to find it and to present it to you. Okay. So it's here. I prepared it myself before that. Yeah, it's a long one, but
I read it under the video on the Bulgarian episode, and that's why I wanted to tackle this comment from the Bulgarian episode, because he claims that I didn't explain well enough the negative role of Greeks, of Greek bands, of the pressure, the assimilation of Bulgarians in Greek Macedonia, etc. Well, first of all, I would say that it's true that I concentrated more on Yugoslav Macedonian falsifications. It's because Lilian Petrov obviously did this. It wasn't someone who declared themselves Greek to do this. It was obviously the Yugoslav authorities that started this. That's why I concentrated more on this on the one hand. On the other hand, I have to notice that, of course, in my dissertation as well, I talk about the pressure on Bulgarians, ethnic Bulgarians who declare themselves to be ethnic Bulgarians from Greece, and the blacklisting of such people who declare themselves to be ethnic Bulgarians or ethnic Macedonians. Some of them were blacklisted, and that's been discovered in 1993 in Canada. that some people who declare themselves as Macedonians or Bulgarians are not allowed to enter Greece, or their relatives have issues in Greece with threats for being fired, etc. So I talked about this. I also talked about the Pan-Macedonian Association in Toronto that represents Greek Macedonians, where I discovered basically ethnic Bulgarians as well, who openly declare that they speak Bulgarian, but they're Greek. However, I had extreme pressure by Professor Vasilis Vourkoutiotis, a Greek-Canadian professor who was one of my reviewers of my dissertation, who literally tried to prevent me from getting a doctoral degree from the University of Ottawa. And he even went that far that after the defense, he basically delayed my defense with a year. But even after the defense, he said that I have to declare in the introduction of my thesis that I'm Bulgarian, and that's why I'm subjective. So I don't, of course, justify anything that I've done. I try to be as honest as possible, but also you have to realize that when we talk about the Greeks, I had tremendous pressure, whereas with the ethnic Macedonians, I started to feel the pressure much later in 2021 when the former president of United Macedonians, Dragi Stojkovski, tried to demand my firing from Schiller International University.
Oh, this is another very interesting story that I would like to ask, but maybe later. But first of all, I think if we speak about the limitations of your work at the time, probably it was a kind of necessary compromise. It's very fine that you share this information with us, so make it clear. And I believe that will be also a very useful for the people who watch us to understand the broader context in which all these three different ethnic groups live and act and function together in Canada. Not together as together, but at the same time. So all these dynamics of the relationships obviously had a big influence even on academic level. But what is interesting for me is that the Greek side was first, the Macedonian ethnic Macedonian side was second, and it was you to make this research finally. So the Macedonian Bulgarians were late, unfortunately, but not so late enough to miss the opportunity to change something.
Yeah, well.
And since we speak
sorry,
about,
I couldn't hear your last phrase. I couldn't hear your last phrase. Something happened.
Okay, maybe this is something with the connection, but I was thinking about the dynamics and the relationship between these three communities, ethnic identities: Greek, Macedonian, Bulgarian, Macedonian, and maybe Tane. As far as I remember, Tane had some question about this.
Your research explores the formation of Bulgarian, Greek, and Macedonian ethnic identities among Macedonian Canadians. What did you discover about how and when these identities emerged, and what historical, political, or social factors shaped their development? Can you outline the history of Macedonian immigration to Canada, comparing the key patterns, motivations, and experience before and after World War II?
Yeah, of course. As also Mr. Stankov mentioned, by late 19th, beginning of 20th century, the first immigrants started to come. And initially, they would either speak Bulgarian or Greek, and they would identify, most of them would be ethnic Bulgarians in any case, and they would identify with the Bulgarian ethnic community, but some ethnic Bulgarians would side with the ethnic Greeks, and they would declare Greek identity, and they would go to the Greek church, of course, whereas the Macedonian-Bulgarians would create their own churches, first Saint Cyril and Methody, and then Saint George, and only really the ethnic Macedonian identity would start in the 1960s, and in 1962 they would make Saint Clement of Ohrid the first ethnic Macedonian church in Canada. Funny enough, it was created 3 years before even it was recognized as an autonomous church within the Serbian Orthodox Church. So I would say that really, even though the communists tried to create separate ethnic Macedonian identity, it was unsuccessful, and even the few people who, like Dincho Rally, tried to create it in Toronto, separate Macedonian identity, they would say that, yes, we're Macedonians, but we actually speak Bulgarian. So there wouldn't be authentic ethnic Macedonians. They would just follow the political line of the Bulgarian Communist Party. But in the 1960s already, you have Yugoslav immigrants coming from the Republic of the Yugoslav Republic back then of Macedonia, who would for first time already declare that they're true Macedonians, ethnic Macedonians, using a Macedonian language. They would boost the organization United Macedonians in Canada, which would start to promote this separate identity. As a result, there would be always a conflict between the three communities, especially, of course, among the really the leadership of the communities. When we talk about United Macedonians, especially, and the leadership of MPO, the local chapters in Toronto, and the Pan-Macedonian Association, which would represent the Greek interpretation of Macedonian identity. And there would be clashes in newspapers, there would be protests, especially, I would say in the 1990s, the major sparks were between the Greek Macedonians and the ethnic Macedonians. There were cases in Toronto when, for example, ethnic Macedonians tried to put some flowers on the monument of Alexander the Great, and literally there was a barricade made by Greek Macedonians that they wouldn't allow this. And then it was discovered that they started to blacklist even people who declared themselves ethnic Macedonians.
Your book very successfully proved that actually three different ethnic identities could coexist among the immigrants from Macedonia. Some of them identify as Greek, some as Bulgarian, some as Macedonian in the ethnic sense of the term. But does their national narratives could converge in any way, or they're always destined to be in conflict, to collide, to fight with each other? Is it possible? Because in reality, we see that these communities exist. They are there. And we know that there are some kind of conflicts. They collide. Is it possible in a certain way to find a way to meet them, to have this encounter, which could lead us to, let's say, the common understanding, to mutual understanding about the dynamics of identities, and hopefully to future reconciliation among these three distinct identities?
Of course, I think it's quite possible to find common ground, and the common ground would be based on accepting the reality, accepting the facts, and mutual respect. If someone tells you I'm Greek, you shouldn't say, oh, you're a traitor, you're a patriarchist, or Grecoman, or whatever. No, we accept this, and vice versa. If someone says I'm Bulgarian or I'm Macedonian, we have to accept this. I think that we start from there, and actually I mentioned this in my dissertation, that actually there are cases like this. There are cases where you have a family and the parents consider themselves Bulgarians, but one son decides that he's ethnic Macedonian, and the other son decides that he's Greek, and all of them being from the same village. You see the same, by the way, with some of the leaders of the organization, how of these organizations in Toronto, you have Jim Karas, who is from ethnic Bulgarian origin, but he considers himself Greek. And then you have, say, other people who are working as journalists in the ethnic Macedonian press in Toronto, who consider themselves ethnic Macedonians. But I think that in order to have common ground and to avoid conflicts among the three different communities and identities, it is important, first of all, to have respect, to have mutual recognition, as I said. But the second important thing is to accept the historical reality. And this is what we see that it's not happening. The problem is that the newest community, the ethnic Macedonian community, cannot accept the fact that they're a new community in Toronto. And they try to prove that they're as old, if not older, than the Greek and the Bulgarian community in Toronto. And how could they prove this? The only way is to take the Bulgarian documents and literally forge them, falsify them, and say that they were actually Macedonian. That's basically the tactics that they use. And that's very unfortunate. And we have to stop this. In the name of science, it's not. I have to also mention something, that what I did was really my scholarly interest. I haven't been paid a cent by the Bulgarian government or by Bulgarian institution. All my dissertation project and actually my tuition at the University of Ottawa was paid by the University of Ottawa and the Canadian government. All my funds come from the University of Ottawa, from the Department of History of the University of Ottawa, from the Canadian Studies chair at the University of Ottawa at the time, etc. So I had no really nationalistic interests or conflict of interest with the Bulgarian government. I've never worked for the Bulgarian government. I'm not a diplomat or related to the Bulgarian government in any way. So I did it as a scholarly project. But then I realized that I touch many nerves in the Greek community, in the Macedonian community, and I realized how harmful this is for scholarly research, to have all these forged documents. And I thought that's my mission, to change that. But unfortunately, I haven't completed my mission. As you see, to this day, these documents, Bulgarian documents, are still mistranslated and included in the Macedonian archives. That's the sad conclusion.
Hopefully, this is conclusion only of the chapter, not of the whole story.
Hopefully.
And this comment from our friend Argir Stumbov from Istanbul, Tsarigrad, is especially for you, Professor Kostov. You're simply a real patriot.
Thank you. But as I said, really, my intention was just to be a real scholar, to just describe what happened, how the identity evolved, how people initially were sojourners, as so guest workers, if you want, as Lilian Petrov says, and then they would change their identity. They would start to assimilate, to integrate into the Canadian society, to just have the usual ethnic community story of different immigrant groups, but I thought, okay, I will describe the Bulgarian case. I didn't want to rock the boat so much to make people so mad that they want my firing, or to make them want me to not graduate my doctorate, or to find falsified documents. I didn't even suspect that I would find what I found.
Professor Kostov, you discovered the incorrect and even scientifically criminal act.
Scientifically,
I'm sorry, the inclusion of Macedonian Bulgarian heritage in the Macedonian collection of the Multicultural History Society of Ontario. Can you describe this issue and explain why terms like forgeries and appropriation apply in this case?
well, we to some extent touched this question, but I would say that we can clearly talk about forgery and appropriation, because as you see, I used even a translator, a professional translator, who proved that the documents that I discovered were written in Bulgarian. So if they were archived as Macedonian, that's appropriation of Bulgarian documents. So I think we can use the term. That's one issue. But also, if a document, as you see, states that that's a Bulgarian-American guide or letter writer, or Bulgarian-Russian dictionary, or Bulgarian-English dictionary, and that's, as you see, archived as and filed officially as written in Macedonian, or even the title of the document is translated as Macedonian English or Macedonian Russian, yes, I would call this a forgery. I would say that's the clear definition. As I said, the problem in Canada was that since people are very try always to be diplomatic, to be politically correct, they didn't want to openly use the term forgery. But that's the reality. And the other reason why they don't want to use it, because as you know, unfortunately, that's the other problem, that truth in history doesn't always matter. What matter most are political interests, and especially now the political interest is okay, to make sure that Russia has no influence in the Balkans, so we have to integrate the entire Western Balkans in the European Union, which is true, of course, but that doesn't mean that we have to close our eyes to the historical truth. And as you and this is what happened even before. I actually found this very interesting document. Now I will show you a very interesting document. As you see, this is that was a confidential document during the Cold War, when actually the priest of one of the Macedonian-Bulgarian churches in Toronto, Holy Trinity, Vasil Mikhailov, writes to his member of parliament in the Canadian Parliament, asking to deal with actually the discrimination of Bulgarians in both Greece and Yugoslavia, how Bulgarians are treated. And as you see, this is from the archives, taken from the Canadian archives. This is the answer that used to be, of course, secret back then, by the foreign minister of Canada at the time, Lester B. Pearson, who later became even the prime minister. And he says, you know, your letter about the issue and the Macedonian political organization, as you see, to which Mr. Mikhailov belongs, favors, I am informed, an autonomous Macedonia, etc. But it has a strong pro-Bulgarian orientation. And then they say, as you see, we would not wish to appear to show friendliness towards a group which, though apparently anti-communist, is pro-Bulgarian and hostile to Greece, a country with which we maintain the friendliest relations and with which we are allied in NATO, and Yugoslavia, a country whose continuing survival against Soviet pressure is in the general interests of peace and security. So I'm sure you will appreciate my desire not to extend too friendly a hand to an organization wishing to bring charges, perhaps unfounded and certainly hostile, against our ally Greece. So that's the unfortunate reality. And I think this continues to this day. The only difference is that these documents now, I could have access to them as a Canadian government employee. By the way, yes, I wasn't really associated with the Bulgarian government, but I was for 4 years, including while I was doing my Ph.D. research. I was working for the Canadian federal government as a historical researcher back then in the Department of Indian and Northern Affairs. So I had access to confidential and secret documents because I had also secret clearance. But even though now I don't have this access, I'm sure that the same letters are actually being circulated, just written by different people with the same argument that, look, we don't care these guys if they feel Macedonians, Bulgarians, whatever. We don't care if they forge documents or not. We want this country to be, accepted faster in the European Union, to stop the Russian influence, and we don't care what these guys do. So this is the big political issue that you wanted to ask me, Mr. Velichkov, about, I think.
What were the main consequences for you, Professor Kostov, after you wrote and made the public defense of your dissertation, and especially after you published your book? What happened later? You mentioned something about organization, United Macedonians.
Yes.
What happened with you? What was the reaction? I understand that the universities, the MHSO, didn't react, institutions, etc., nobody reacted, but there was a kind of reaction, unexpected, probably.
Unexpected. Well, initially, actually, for example, the Greek community were even happy that I noticed that documents written even in Greek by the Pan-Macedonian Association are included in the Macedonian collection, which really infuriated them. But scholarly, the reaction actually was quite pleasant because my book was bought by major libraries around the world. More than 150 libraries currently have my book, including even the National Library of China. I saw my book in Saudi Arabia, in Tanzania, in Kenya, in Botswana, in the major European countries' national libraries as well, in the National Library of Taiwan, as I said, China, etc., Germany, Britain. Bulgarians didn't really react because, as I said, in Bulgaria, there is a lot of research on these issues, and they think that probably I haven't said anything new. But suddenly in 2021, Dragis Stojkovski, who I actually interviewed in the book as president of the United Macedonian Organization of Canada, he wrote a letter, a very fiery letter, to want to actually to demand my firing by the university that I worked with, Schiller International University. Once again, I would love because I want
Do you have
to.
the document?
I have the document. I even have to send it to you because it's absolutely fantastic. This document. Let me. Do you see my screen now? Do you see the screen? Yes, I think you see it, right?
Yes.
Now, as you see, he says how he starts writing to director of the university, the president, Marta Muniz. Imagine a Holocaust denier writing his truth about the Holocaust. I'm sure you will deny this truth seeker to publish his truth or lecture at your institution. Well, you have already allowed that by letting Mr. Kostov use your institution for his chauvinistic and racist ideas regarding the Macedonians. And so he puts everything in quotation marks, my research, my proof, and he says that I'm basically an apologist of chauvinistic policies of fascist Bulgaria and Macedonia, that I'm basically a fascist talking against Yugoslav partisans, that there are many Turkish words like dushman used in Macedonian, Bulgarian, Serbian, that doesn't mean anything, doesn't prove anything. So he says that Mes will not accept chauvinists like Kostov attempting to deny our Macedonian ethnicity and heritage. And he even says that my book should be, he says, we now live in a time where chauvinistic books are banned, reprints are cancelled, and fake news is stopped in its tracks. Mr. Kostov's book deserves the same treatment. Act now and stop a chauvinist in his tracks. So as you see, he wants me to be fired. He wants my book to be cancelled, banned. So obviously in Spain, everybody had a good laugh with this. And a month later, he wrote a second letter asking, is this guy still there? And his book is still on the shelves. I can't believe it. And initially, I didn't take this seriously because, as I said, I'm trying to do my best to write what I think, what I see in documents. And though when he did it second time, that already is too much because he's damaging my obviously academic reputation. That's libel. And I contacted a Canadian lawyer in Toronto, and we sent him a letter warning him about the repercussions going to court, because he has many claims that he cannot prove in court. He, for example, claims not only that I'm a Holocaust denier, a fascist, that he cannot prove, but he also claims that I declared him Bulgarian in my book, which is absolutely not true, because I quoted him. I had a in-person oral interview with him, and I clearly quoted him in my dissertation and book, and I stated that he's a representative of the ethnic Macedonian community, being a president of the United Macedonians organization. But he said that I put there that he's Bulgarian, and he also, by the way, in his letter, presented himself as the acting president of the United Macedonians, which is not true. He wasn't a president at the time when he wrote this in 2021.
No, it sounds like a fairy tale, like a fiction story. But actually, it's a very real story. And what is the problem here is that this is a kind of censorship, a very undemocratic censorship. And that raises the question about the academic autonomy, about the independence of the intellectual work, independence from political, institutional, organizational, or lobby pressure. And it proves how fragile is the situation of a scholar, scientist like you, who is trying to make an objective research and is trying to put the sources, the information, the documents of his historical research as much as correctly possible. And here is the problem. Where is the academic autonomy? Where is the independence of a scholar to be a scholar, not a political propaganda man or something like this? That happens. This is what
that happens
to Dr. Petrov. She acted as a propaganda man, propaganda person, unfortunately.
Yeah, unfortunately, this is what happens, Mr. Stankov, that actually the propagandists have the floor very often, have the stage, and they take advantage of that because, as you see, many governments fund chairs of Macedonian studies or something else to propagate certain views, and that's been tolerated. And also there is political pressure on many universities. They don't have problems, they don't have any issues, and that's why unfortunately many universities are not as independent and autonomous as we want. As I told you before, I was very naive when I started my career. I thought that it just like this, you do your scholarly work, you see the facts, you publish them, and that's it, and how academia works. But with time, I realized, even with my first encounters with Professor Vorkutiotis, who tried to, make me remove something about the Greeks or talk about the Greek pressure on Macedonians and Bulgarians, I realized that the things are not that rosy. I would say that I was lucky that I taught in Spain at the time, and I'm still teaching there, is that the Spanish universities feel far away from the topic, and they don't have any interest. And that's why they found this amusing, and nobody even thought to fire me. But to be honest, I'm not sure that if, as Argyr Stumbov here says, and all these strange things happening in Canada, one of the most democratic countries in the world. Yes, and imagine though, Mr. Stumbov, if I was actually at that point in Canada teaching at the University of Toronto or University of Ottawa, and they say, wow, we have a problem with one of the ethnic communities. I don't want to speculate, but I'm not sure that everybody would laugh, and at least there wouldn't be a committee investigating my, scholarly work, etc. That again shows you what happens and how autonomous we are at universities.
What can we think about the future, or what kind of future can we wish for ourselves? Not about being naive, but still being realists, but thinking about a better future that we can have in science, in the relationships between Macedonian Bulgarians and ethnic Macedonians.
As I said, our relationship with ethnic Macedonians should be based on mutual respect. When they say I'm Macedonian, we should respect that. But also we should respect the historical truth. And if we show someone that this document, this dictionary, this almanac, this convention was written in Bulgarian, they shouldn't deny it, and we shouldn't even dispute this. But I think I'm still optimistic that regardless of this, as you see, since 2009, regardless of this 16 last years on the same issue, I still hope that Bulgarian and other scholars, including me, we would eventually have a dialogue with the MHSO leadership and persuade them that it's not about Bulgarian propaganda, it's about historical truth. And that's why we should take these documents that are written in Bulgarian, that declare the Bulgarian national identity of people, and move them to where they belong, to the Bulgarian section of the archives. Whether this will happen or no, though, I cannot be sure.
One of the documents that we saw in the collection, Macedonian Almanac, photo from Greg Chachov. So here is written 1914, 40. Here it is written about Bulgarian immigrants in the North American states, Canada, Australia, and South America, etc., etc.
As you can both see, Mr. Stankov and Velichkov, Mr. Velichkov, this document is clearly written in the Macedonian language. Of course, I'm sarcastic now, but which is absolutely shocking, and that's why we have to have a normal dialogue with the Canadian archivists. Is that it's not possible in reality to have a document written in Macedonian before the language is even codified, because the modern Macedonian language was codified in 1945. How is it possible in 1940 to have a document written in a language that didn't exist? If we follow this pattern, as I said in some conferences in North America, if we follow this pattern, we could claim that Hamlet was written by Shakespeare in American English, or if you want, in American language, before even the United States was a country. I don't understand this, really. It's clear, as you can see from the document, that it's written in Bulgarian, and these people had Bulgarian national identity. And that's why it's so puzzling for me. Can you imagine? I'm talking about something obvious. I had to write hundreds of pages to prove something obvious, that if a document, historical document, is written in Bulgarian, it is Bulgarian. And imagine 16 years later, we discuss the same topic, that if you see a duck and it declares itself to be a duck, it's a duck. Basically, that's what I'm doing. Nothing spectacular, nothing out of this world. Basically, I try to be just an objective scholar who reads the documents, reviews the documents, and analyzes them and describes them with their real content. And if the document is written in Bulgarian, why say it's written in Greek or in Macedonian or in anything else? But obviously, that's the only way to prove that the ethnic Macedonian identity was older than any other Balkan identity in Toronto, to take these documents.
And what is astonishing here is, for example, in this document, the Macedonian Almanac from 1940, that the people who created this almanac speak about Macedono-Bulgarian immigration. They wrote about Bulgarian people's schools, etc., etc. They created churches, schools, local organizations. In this article especially, it's about the city of Štip in nowadays North Macedonia, the birthplace of Todor Alexandrov. There is a statistics here, and in this statistic it's written that more than half of the population of Štip during the time of Todor Alexandrov were Bulgarians, and the rest were Turks, Jews, Roma people, etc., etc. So the denying of the existence of these people, Bulgarians from Macedonia, it is a kind of moral, political, cultural, scientific crime. Nobody, if we respect the self-identification of people today, we are also obliged to respect self-identification of people today. Identities
in the past.
In the past. Thank you. We can accept that identities can evolve in different ways under different social, historical, political circumstances. But what was. It shouldn't be corrected, changed, falsified, etc.
Absolutely, Mr. Stankov, and that was the only thing that I also wrote and claimed in my dissertation and in my book. And as you see, you were surprised that Macedonian Almanac was was included in the Macedonian collection. What about the administrative documents of the Bulgarian school in the churches in Toronto that are included in the collection, or the personal documents of a Bulgarian doctor from Yambol region, from Grammatikovo, John Grudev? If this happens, or someone from Botevgrad even, as is the case of Dimitar Malinchev and his dictionary. So that's why, yeah, this is really shocking. And that's a forgery. I'm so sorry, but there's no other way to call it: forgery, falsification, appropriation, and misinterpretation of historical documents. That's what happened.
I think it was a great way to put the end of our conversation today. What do you think, dear Atanas Velichkov?
Yeah, I want to say big thank you to our guest, and appreciate this episode. Maybe the truth will make the path to the people.
Hopefully. Thank you very much to both of you for this invitation. And again, continue to have great episodes, and I will continue, of course, to follow this.
We will gladly put this episode in our playlist called Corridor 8 Academy. It was an amazing episode. Hopefully there will be another episode, hopefully soon, when we can be able to report that the forgeries you discovered are corrected. Hopefully science will win over politics.
Hopefully.
Long live Bulgaria.
Long live Macedonia.
Long live Macedonian Bulgarians, and
And
glory to
glory to
Ukraine.
Ukraine.